Story 1. In United States versus Reynolds, three widows sued the government in 1953 for the accident report on the airplane crash that killed their husbands. They claimed that the report would prove the crash was caused by negligent maintenance, entitling them to damages. The government claimed that the report could not be released because it contained sensitive military information. The court accepted this argument and refused to release the report. This is the origin and basis of the state secrets privilege. The report was finally declassified in 1996. It did prove that the government was negligent in maintaining the airplane and that the widows should have received their damages. It did not contain any sensitive military information. The entire basis of the state secrets privilege was a lie to deny innocent civilians the damages they were rightfully owed. Nonetheless, the state secrets privilege continues to be asserted and accepted in courts to this day. There is no telling how many of these assertions are also lies. This was not an almost got away with it story. They did get away with it and continue to do so. Story 2. The National Security Agency is spying on American citizens. They still do it anyway, but we know about it now. Story 3. MKUltra. The experiments conducted on our own citizens were deeply unethical, not to mention the atrocities committed against people held captive outside the United States. Story 4. The child migration scheme undertaken by the British government up until the 1970s involved sending more than 130,000 children away. Story 5. If we are including the United States Army, I am still somewhat unsettled by the Pat Tillman situation. Was he deliberately killed by Army leadership? Or was it genuinely just another friendly fire incident? I spent time in the Army in the mid-1970s, and if you think the Army leadership would not harm or abandon a soldier to protect their reputation, I have news for you. Story 6. The disturbing thing to me is that the Central Intelligence Agency is almost certainly working on numerous programs that are equally horrifying or worse than everything mentioned above. They are basically a branch of government tasked with everything illegal or immoral that the government does not want you to know about. Perhaps 50 years from now we will learn what they are up to today, but they will continue their work unabated. Story 7. Assuming my own, not the United States one. Toeslagen affair. Dutch translated to child benefit scandal. In short, the government accused people of fraud over either non-existing or minor mistakes, fining them thousands of euros. They placed them under debt, then took children away because parents could not care for them. This happened to over 1,000 parents. The government refused to admit the mistake for years. They refused to give parents and judges access to their files but still called them guilty. Story 8. I know this is focused on the United States government, but I am going to tell you about a Mexican case. In 2014, in Guerrero, 43 students from rural schools were on buses headed to Mexico City to participate in the October 2nd protest, a date when the government killed students in 1968. On their way, they were ambushed by local and federal police joined by the army. They shot and killed them all and threw many of them into mass graves. When people found out about the disappearance of the 43 students, the highest authorities of the legal department began investigating. It was a botched investigation from the start. The mayor, the state governor, and the president all feigned ignorance. The situation culminated with the publication of a report known as the Historic Truth, which claimed organized crime was responsible and that the students, most of whom were just entering their first year, had ties to criminal groups, making it a conflict related to that. No one believed them. Journalists denounced everything, and it became the biggest scandal for the president, causing a shift against his political party, which has kept losing ever since. The problem is, despite a change of government 6 years ago that promised prosecution and widespread knowledge of who was behind it, no one has been prosecuted because many of the people involved are high-ranking officials, and many still hold government positions. So, they got away with it, only fumbling the cover-up. Story 9. Here in Florida, the state government almost got away with covering up an approval to turn state parks into resorts and golf courses. Governor Ron DeSantis faced significant criticism for that. Story 10. Santa Susana Field Laboratory had a massive sodium reactor meltdown in 1959. It was only discovered because a University of California, Los Angeles researcher found it buried in a report. Story 11. The government almost got away with covering up the Project MKUltra program, which involved unethical experiments on unwitting subjects to explore mind control and drug effects. It was revealed in the 1990s, leading to significant controversy and changes in oversight for covert operations. Story 12. As a German, I want to discuss the National Socialist Underground files. The National Socialist Underground was a group of 3 people, 2 males and 1 female, who were neo-Nazis and murdered 9 migrants and 1 policewoman between 2000 and 2007, along with committing various other terrorist actions. The Constitutional Protection Agency made serious mistakes, as they should have known what was happening because they had paid contacts who were close to the group. However, for some reason, they did not take any action, and when the situation escalated, some critical files from the investigation were shredded. In 2014, another investigation was conducted to determine why no one intervened and what exactly the Constitutional Protection Agency knew. The final report was initially set to be locked away for 120 years, but after a massive public outcry, this was shortened to 30 years. In the fall of 2022, journalists from the ZDF magazine Royale, a late-night show, and Open Knowledge Foundation Germany leaked the entire 173-page report for public access. Story 13. There is a chance that President Richard Nixon would have been able to place blame on others and escape the Watergate scandal if he had not been extremely paranoid and secretly recorded conversations in the White House. Story 14. In Australia, the welfare program attempted to automate the debt notification process and made significant errors, resulting in many recipients being incorrectly told they owed the government thousands of dollars. This issue was only identified after people contacted the public service watchdogs. Unfortunately, it led to some individuals taking their lives over false debts. Story 15. Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune. Senior, highly honorable Marines lied extensively about unsafe drinking water. Story 16. In Australia, the government used data cross-matching to send people demands for money. It was a well-intentioned idea, but it did not work, and people received fabricated bills for thousands of dollars. Some individuals tragically took their own lives. Story 17. The Federal Bureau of Investigation surveillance program was discovered by individuals who broke into a Federal Bureau of Investigation office and took a large number of documents in the 1970s. Story 18. Covering up how Israeli intelligence agents in the 1970s covertly obtained jobs at a uranium mine and stole uranium from a plant in Pennsylvania, having the uranium directly shipped to Israel to manufacture their nuclear warhead supply. Story 19. The PRISM surveillance program the National Security Agency was using to monitor all of your internet traffic without a warrant. Thanks to national hero Edward Snowden, we know about it. Sadly, nobody really cared. Now he is trapped in Russia because the United States canceled his passport as he was seeking asylum. If he returned home, he would be imprisoned at ADX Florence or possibly executed for treason. His only offense was exposing the government flagrantly violating your constitutional rights. Story 20. MKUltra has been described as a false conspiracy theory discussed only by irrational individuals, despite being an objectively real event that occurred. When discussing this topic, people often react with the same skepticism as they do to flat Earth theories, false moon landing claims, or chemtrail beliefs. Story 21. They do not want you to know this, but the ducks at the park are free. You can take them home. I have over 600 ducks. Story 22. 500 broken treaties with the original people of this continent. 500 broken treaties with the tribes. 567 federally recognized. The theft of Mount Rushmore and the Black Hills. All the coups started in Central America and, recently in South America, involving the overthrowing of governments for corporate gain and profits, causing thousands more indigenous people to suffer genocide. The Monroe Doctrine and the theft of Hawaii. All this is documented, but to speak the ugly truth is frowned upon. Story 23. I don't know if they almost got away with it, but in the first few months after Hurricane Katrina, the federal government insisted that the levees had not failed and had been overtopped, despite the fact that people who had levees practically in their backyard could see them tilted or lying on the ground. In the end, when they got sued and the case worked its way through the courts, the ruling was that the United States Army Corps of Engineers could not be sued. Story 24. The Business Plot. They were so close to burying the whole thing after it was more likely than not to fail. Story 25. The Tuskegee syphilis study is one of the darkest moments in United States medical history. For 40 years, the government intentionally withheld treatment from African American men suffering from syphilis to study the disease's progression. This gross violation of ethics was not exposed until a whistleblower came forward in the 1970s. Story 26. I just watched the torture report. It is based on the real story of the use of torture by the government during the War on Terror. It was frustrating to watch the lengths they went to and the politics and bureaucracy used to cover it up. Story 27. In the 1940s and 1950s, before the long-term effects of radiation exposure were well understood, the United States government tested nuclear weapons on Rennet Island in the Pacific. After the tests, men were ordered to build a concrete dome over the craters of the detonations without being informed about the project and without protective equipment. Over the years, all the men who worked on that dome have died from cancer and other illnesses related to radiation exposure. The United States government continues to deny that these deaths were caused by radiation and has not compensated the families of those who died. Story 28. In 1988, in response to some high-profile corruption, the New South Wales Premier, equivalent to a state governor, formed the Independent Commission Against Corruption. The Premier later resigned after being investigated by the Independent Commission Against Corruption. Since then, there have been 10 New South Wales premiers. The Independent Commission Against Corruption has investigated most of them and directly or indirectly caused some to resign. Story 29. In the United Kingdom, the Post Office software scandal involves a quasi-private enterprise linked to the monarchy and the government. Story 30. Funded and assisted in a coup that ousted a democratically elected socialist president and installed Pinochet, a brutal dictator who dissolved parliament, banned opposition parties and unions, arrested and tortured dissenters, and caused the disappearance of 3,000 people. However, they established free markets. Story 31. Probably Operation Paperclip, but I do not know if that was a huge cover-up or not. Story 32. In my country, the systematic sexual abuse of tens of thousands of young girls. Story 33. Gray grab Slim, imagine straight head boat, jeans intelligent whistle. Story 34. Cannabis. They really thought they could get away with that one, but the prisons are overflowing, and the billionaires would rather not build more as that would reduce their profits. Story 35. Weapons of mass destruction and Edward Snowden whistleblowing on the National Security Agency's massive surveillance efforts. Story 36. Their crimes were committed against civilians who had nothing to do with the Iraq War. Story 37. Back in 1959, have you ever heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia? A group of 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition in the Ural Mountains, but none of them made it back. When search teams found their bodies, the scene was straight out of a horror movie. Some were found with missing eyes, one with a missing tongue, others with their skulls and chests crushed, yet no external wounds. Their tent was ripped open from the inside as if they were fleeing something in total panic. Radiation was found on their clothes, and to this day, no one can fully explain what happened. The Soviet government quickly closed the case, blaming it on natural forces. But rumors started swirling about secret military tests, possibly weapons experiments. When independent investigators tried to dig deeper, the authorities suddenly lost key documents. They nearly buried the whole case. Story 38. The Brazilian government is laundering money using taxes and the population's funds. Story 39. In the United Kingdom, the post office scandal involved the government. When it started, Royal Mail and the Post Office were nationalized and part of the same organization. During the period of the scandal, they were privatized and split into separate companies. For those not in the United Kingdom, a new computer system was introduced that contained errors. Hundreds of postmasters were convicted on criminal charges such as theft and fraud. Some of them served significant jail time because the computer system did not calculate the post office store's takings correctly, resulting in discrepancies with the cash register. Story 40. Rotherham local government, police, and council all knew what was happening but did nothing out of fear. Story 41. Pretty much any case brought against the United States government under the Equal Access to Justice Act. Story 42. I read a book about Area 51 based largely on interviews with former employees from that time. They talked a lot about the unusual nuclear activities conducted there, as well as about the spy planes and secret programs. However, the book reached a point where the interviewee refused to speak further. He essentially said that the human experiments, similar to those conducted by the Nazis, were also done there. Even in his old age, he would not disclose any details. Every time the author mentioned it, he responded that he did not even want to think about it. These activities never saw the light of day, so it seems they did get away with it. It is similar to the moon landing, which would have been easier to fake. I am not sure either way, but Russia never challenged the United States about it because they were also involved in deceit. That situation would have been complicated to expose. Story 43. The Tuskegee syphilis study involved African American men with syphilis who were not given treatment in order to observe the progression of the disease. Later, the Guatemala gonorrhea study involved people who were intentionally infected with gonorrhea, although not through sexual contact, and were also left untreated for similar reasons. Story 44. The government almost got away with covering up Vance's eyeliner. Story 45. The government almost got away with my neighbor's smoke detector. One day, I heard a loud beep at 3 a.m. and thought it was an emergency alert. It turns out the emergency was only my neighbor burning toast. The real cover-up was him claiming he was cooking gourmet meals while we all knew it was just his late-night toast sessions. Sometimes the craziest conspiracies are just charred bread. Story 46. JFK assassination, moon landing, Las Vegas shooting, 2020 election, coronavirus disease, Donald Trump assassination, Tuskegee syphilis study, collaborating with evil spirits also known as unidentified flying objects, German genocide, the list goes on. The better question is, what has our government done that is not evil? Story 47. Iran-Contra scandal under President Ronald Reagan, a leading conservative figure. Story 48. Nazi infiltration of the United States government to spread propaganda under the guise of America First. Story 49. Targeted individuals are being experimented on with neurological weapons. Story 50. I am Hungarian, and the government is stealing the European Union funds. If they win money for a new road, new bridge, or new hospital, they will steal the money and build something suspicious. Last year, new public restrooms were built for 95,000 euros, but they are still closed. They built these restrooms and immediately closed them. The money simply vanished. It is an easy way to make money. Story 51. The French government blew up a Greenpeace boat in New Zealand. They no longer care about hiding their actions and have recently attempted to classify an ecological organization as a terrorist movement. Police brutality is routinely allowed when the target is an ecological protester. Story 52. Area 51. Hey, let's build this secret base out in the Nevada desert and make it a no-fly zone around it. Who will know? And if they ask, we just deny it. Story 53. What do you consider almost got away with? I think most people realize there is something suspicious about the magic bullet, but nobody has ever faced any consequences. Story 54. I would say the Santa Susana Field Laboratory Sodium Nuclear Reactor Meltdown. This would be a combined cover-up by the government and Rocketdyne, a major government contractor in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. There are nuclear scientists who consider this to be the worst nuclear accident on United States soil. Story 55. Not the government, but the Republican Party told North Vietnam not to accept a peace deal so Richard Nixon could win the 1968 election and later offer North Vietnam a better deal. Story 56. Has anyone seen the medical report on Donald Trump being shot? Story 57. Origin of COVID-19. Some good reporters investigated the information. The assassination of John F. Kennedy, until the Zapruder film was aired, revealed many new details. Story 58. Donald Trump is still trying to cover up that he brought forward an illegal false elector scheme to overturn the last election and have state representatives reject the election results and vote him president. It only failed because Michael Pence did not go along with it. Jacob Daniel Vance has confirmed he would go along with the scheme. Trump's lawyers who created the scheme have been disbarred and are currently on trial. But somehow, members of the Republican Party have concealed it from their own base. Story 59. TWA Flight 800. Just kidding, they completely got away with it. Into the buzzsaw. Story 60. We study thorough business surveys. They know everything about us because we tell them freely. Story 61. Absolutely horrendous what they did. Eerily similar to Nazi Germany and Japanese research projects. Story 62. People will read this entire thread. The lies, the hypocrisies, the cover-ups, all of it. Then still take every single thing the government and media say at face value. You cannot fix stupidity. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.